Once can be a blip, twice can be a coincidence, but three times, now we're looking at the start of a trend here. Coming out of week 3, Jeff and I are going to talk about some of the biggest risers and fallers. Jeff, we're going to use my article as kind of the show sheet here to work off of a little bit. And this is always fun because I talk about the risers and fallers, and sometimes you say, "Hey, Dave, this guy shouldn't be a faller," or "Hey, Dave, you're really taking the cheese on this one. This guy's rising way too much." But I think we're going to be in agreement on the first guy that I want to talk about here, Caleb Williams. No way not to look at what he did in week 3 and say that he's a big riser coming out of there, right?
I mean, he's not a riser if I already had him there.
Right?
If you are already
enough.
in on the
All right,
Caleb
all right. Yeah,
Williams Express for fantasy football, he's not exactly a riser. But, we're very excited for sure about the performance that we've seen.
Rest of season rankings, I moved him from QB 14 up to QB 9.
7 in preseason rankings for a
pretty significant move. I mean, yeah, and I had him there as well, but then I had to bump him down a few ticks after what we saw through the first couple of weeks. But now I'm way back on board. I mean, those first couple of weeks were shaky. We saw some fantasy production that was being propped up because of the rushing, but I prefer this type. Like, we saw the rushing kind of vanish in week 3, but 298 yards, 4 touchdowns. But the thing that I like most, Jeff, didn't take a single sack. I mean, as long as I've been a Bears fan, that's it. Like, I just see these quarterbacks coming out after the fourth quarter looking like they've been through war, like mud and blood and tears on their jerseys and looking like they got hit by a car. Caleb Williams in that post-game press conference, hair looked good, hardly cracked a sweat, nice clean jersey. That's what I like to see.
I think that you make a good point talking about the rushing propping things up, but that's the point of the rushing. Like there's a reason why Jalen Hurts is an elite quarterback and Josh Allen is elite quarterback when it comes to fantasy, because when they have the 135-yard passing days because their team blew the doors out of somebody, they also added 60 yards on the ground and ran for a touchdown. So it's like, yes, Williams was propping himself up from that, but that's the package. He's able to prop himself up with the rushing. And so that's where you start to have the conversation of separating from guys that can be a low end quarterback 1 to guys that can be the quarterback 1 when you add that rushing element in. So I think that was really encouraging for Williams. And it was funny, the narrative on Caleb Williams before the season relative to the narrative on Bo Nix. And really the only difference was, the difference was draft capital and expectations. But the other difference was Bo Nix got into the end zone 4 times on the ground and Caleb Williams got into the end zone 0 times on the ground in their rookie year. And when you looked at the numbers, that was pretty much the difference between the two of them. And it just created a wildly different narrative between where we're dealing with fantasy. And I think the other part of Caleb Williams, the narrative that comes in of, it's so much concern about, is he the franchise quarterback? Is it going to happen? Is it going to be the guy that sometimes you just need to take a step back and say, well, he's pretty dang good for fantasy football. And that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, and I think that is nice because when they're trailing, we'll see that like he is willing to play out of the structure of the offense and run the ball and pad that floor. So I do like this, and a lot of people are going to hear like when you say like the overall QB1, a lot of people are going to say that you're being over dramatic or overreacting or whatever. Jeff, he's a QB2 right now in fantasy. I mean, like the only guy outscoring him right now. There's not much holding him back from getting there. And what I'm feeling right now, like when I'm watching him play, it does feel. I don't want to make the comp to Patrick Mahomes, but like Patrick Mahomes' first year as a starter, there was a lot of passing volume, but it was the rushing that kind of pushed him into that elite QB1 finish. It's not that he was, rushing for 1,000+ yards like Lamar Jackson, but it's just that 35, 40 extra yards per game is enough to really raise a player's floor and ceiling. And you talked about Bo Nix. We're going to talk about him on this show as well, but not right now because we are on the risers section. Let's stick with some risers here, Jeff. The very obvious one that I think we need to talk about, and I think the conversation here is just going to be like, how high are we pushing him up rankings? Najee Harris out with an Achilles injury. He's not going to play again this year. Omarion Hampton, a huge, huge riser. And my rest of season rankings, this is somewhere between redraft, weekly, and dynasty rankings. But I pushed him all the way up to RB10, and even that feels kind of low. Like I'm looking, I got Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs ahead of him. But those guys are in a very, very flat tier. And if you're in a league and you say, I want to trade my Derrick Henry for Omarion Hampton, I wouldn't judge anybody for making that move right now.
No, I don't think I would judge anybody at all. And maybe that is a good move to do because Well, we've seen the fumbling with Henry, but we saw week 2 was one of his worst games. And then, yeah, there's a lot of pushback on me right now because I suggested that Derrick Henry is slightly disappointing versus what we saw. Obviously, week 1 was quite the performance. But yeah, I think that when you look at Hampton, it was. I mean, the Najee Harris thing is unfortunate, and it's really frustrating because it's a guy that he fought so hard to. He had that scary thing happen with the offseason with the eye. It was able to come through that, able to get back out, and he looked good. He looked really good week 2. He looked headed like he was headed for a strong game in week 3. It looked like, hey, maybe this is, Najee Harris can really take advantage of this situation and teach Omarion Hampton how to be
Mhm.
an NFL running back. And then there's a streak that ends now. Najee Harris was the only back for 1,000 yards for the last 4 seasons, I believe it is at this point. So that streak ends now.
5, I think. Didn't they
It
pick
might
up
be
his
5.
fifth-year option in Pittsburgh? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that
I
was
think
5
they
years
declined
running.
his 5th-year option. That's the
Oh, yeah,
story.
you're right. Yeah. So 4 years. Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you see a guy go down like that. That's really disappointing. But Hampton is the riser because of this, and I think there was the talk. Greg Roman had mentioned that there's going to be a committee. Like it's not just going to be Hampton. When there was a question about Najee Harris, but when you're throwing so often and throwing at such great success that this offense has done, that allows we see some committees. We talked about Buffalo on our previous episode about a committee there where they've got a passing down back, or Jacksonville is a committee where Quinn Allen's a passing down back, and maybe Hassan Haskins comes in to block somebody on a blitz pickup occasionally and to give Omarion Hampton a breather. But when you're throwing with such great success, you could pile all the touches onto Omarion Hampton because you're thinking that you need to run the ball 30 times a game to win the game.
And they did say Kamani Vidal was the name that Jim Harbaugh shouted out when he said Kamani Vidal is next up to be that RB2. So
That makes
he is
sense.
involved as a pass catcher, and that does make sense. I also can't help but think about the fact that Gus Edwards and his history with Greg Roman, he's still sitting out there as a 30-year-old free agent, and that's not going to camp Hampton's upside that much, but he can come in and handle 6, 8, 10 carries per game to lessen that load a little bit. I went back this morning and I watched every Omarion Hampton touch because, of course, that's what I do when I'm bored on a Tuesday morning. And I will say, like the athleticism is so obvious, but he's kind of a frustrating player to watch at times. And I don't want to be the wet blanket here by any means. Like a good player on a good offense behind a good offensive line. Sometimes it really is as simple as that. But you talk about like learning from Najee Harris, and I think that would have been so important because Najee Harris, his best traits are in his patience and his vision. Like he doesn't have the off the charts athleticism or the burst or those sorts of things, but he's able to just wait for the play to develop and then just squeeze his way through those tight lanes. That's something that Hampton just does not have that feel yet. I mean, he is a young bull right now that is just trying to smash his way through every single hole, no matter how small it is. And that worries me a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is a young guy on a good offense. And even if he does have that where he's just running into his own offensive lineman, all it takes is getting outside once and then popping off that big play. So I'm not trying to be like uh, a Debbie Downer here by any means, but there were some things that I didn't see a lot of at UNC that I'm now seeing on his NFL tape that concerned me a bit.
And I bet if you went back to his freshman year, you would probably see a lot of those things. And that is one of the things that when you, especially blue chip running backs that come in as freshmen that get to play a lot as a true freshman, they're just, the feel is not there yet. The speed is completely different. They're running in the back of offensive linemen, and you're like, what did what did the school see in this guy? And it's a lot more stark at the college level because of the experience. I think it's already clicking for Hampton. I think that it clicked in this past game much more than it did in the first 2 games. It's going to happen a lot faster when you've already got the college experience. It's just, and you've already learned how to acclimate. You've already learned,
Mhm.
and so like it clicks in a lot sooner for a guy here at this level with Hampton. And like I said, I think that it did click in game 3 here, and I think it will really start to click in because that wasn't a concern in the summer. He looked very, very good in camp, and it's the lights come on and things start to move too fast, and then you realize like things have slowed down, and you know what you need to do now at this point. And this next guy probably is a great example of that.
Yeah, and this is we're taking the cream off the top. These are the obvious risers here. Omarion Hampton, huge opportunity with Najee Harris out of the picture, and then James Conner. I haven't seen official word, Jeff, that he's out for the season. So it's a foot injury. They said surgery, IR. Have you seen? It sounds like he's out for the season, but I haven't seen any official confirmation yet. Have you?
I saw ankle. I have not seen official out for the season. I think maybe it's the type of thing of like we want to keep the door open, but some of it you run into. I don't know. I believe it's only 2 players that you can activate off IR, but I don't know where they stand on that. So that is a consideration sometimes on declaring a guy's season over, or like some, they think the Saints are pretty realistic where they're going to end up. So if a guy that might be able to come back for week 16, but you use your IR spots, you might decide like his season's over type things sometimes a little bit. And I think the Cardinals right now having playoff aspirations, I think it's probably the type of thing of if they think that if they got into the playoffs that James Conner would be able to go. But I don't know anything.
Yeah,
Adam Hutchinson knows way more than I do.
Yeah, I just did a quick search on Twitter for James Conner's season, and I see 1,000,001 fantasy accounts saying that James Conner is out for the season, but I've yet to see an official report on it. So
Yeah.
we'll work under the pretense that he's probably going to miss some extended time without making any blind speculation here. Either way, Trey Benson, next man up, and this is a guy that we're excited for when he came into the league. A day 2 pick, off the charts athleticism. He's 6 foot, 220 pounds, and ran a 4.39 40. So he's got the size and speed that we want to see. Kind of like we just talked about with Omarion Hampton. He does kind of rely on his athleticism sometimes more than finesse, which can be frustrating to see from a young player. A lot of east-west tendencies, doesn't always get downhill as quickly as he should, but the opportunity is going to be there, and very similar to Hampton. All it takes is one play, and he's got the speed that if he can get past a defender, he can house at any football. So a lot of excitement here. And this might sound crazy, but like as I'm looking at my rest of season rankings, I really moved him way, way up. And I know right now there's a lot of excitement for Cam Scadaboo and Jordan Mason and some of these other guys. But for this year, for 2025, I think I'd take Benson over both of them.
Oh yeah, I mean Scatterbo. I think there's probably a conversation there. In terms Mason, I think is going to go back to. I mean, Aaron Jones is supposed to be back. I thought it was only like a 4-game absence, or like I don't know how many that's going to end up being.
And they're saying, and Tyrone Tracy, they said 2 to 4 games too.
Yeah, and I only open it. Aaron Jones is definitely going to go back to being Aaron Jones when he comes back. Like he's definitely going to be the receiving back. He's definitely getting his role back. I think there's a chance in New York that Tracy doesn't get the rollback, that Scatterbo just kind of takes everything. And after that performance that we saw on Sunday Night Football, I leave that door open. But I think Benson is definitely, I would definitely rank Benson above the 2 of them in terms of rest of season. And it's really, there's a lot of layers on this because so previously when Emari Demercado was the receiving back in 2023 with James Conner, well, Benson already had taken Emari Demercado's job as the receiving back early this year and already beat him out for that role. And so that opens up the door for, do we see more of a 3-down back out of Trey Benson here instead of kind of Emari Demercado shaving off like some touches and lowering the value there a little bit. The other complicating, interesting thing is when he was drafted, there's clearly a succession plan for James Conner, but James Conner is going to be 31 after this year. I believe it's the 10th highest average annual value at running back contracts, about $10 million on his contract next year. They can waive that and get $8 million off, just have a cap hit of $2 million. So this very much could be Trey Benson just takes the job and they say, well, Trey Benson is our feature back now. We're not going to pay James Conner $10 million off of an ankle injury at 31 years old. And, maybe Conner resigns for a lower dollar amount, or maybe Conner just goes out into free agency. But that's the layers on this one, especially when you're looking at Dynasty Benson, I think in Dynasty should be I would have to. I need to.
That was going to be
I'm
my next
sorry,
question.
Bob
I
and
mean,
Clayton. By the
I was
way, I'm sorry. My ranks are way overdue for Dynasty updates, and so the great Dynasty customers out there that we have amazing Dynasty customers. I should do some real Dynasty ranks very soon here.
Well, here's what I'll say. I was buying Trey Benson for seconds this
Yeah,
offseason, like just
everywhere you
not
could.
even thinking
What?
twice, whether it was early or late. Like I was just throwing out blind, like, hey, here's a second round pick. Give me Trey Benson. And I got a lot of Trey Benson. You're definitely not getting him for a second now. If you're, this is always kind of the question we ask. Like, if you're contending and it's going to be a late first, do you think a late first is too much to spend on Benson? Because that's where he was going in rookie drafts 2 years ago when he came into the league. Like, he was a late first round pick in rookie drafts. Now the opportunity's there. There's nothing stopping him. We know he's going to be the workhorse in this offense. Do you think a projected late first is what you could give up for Trey Benson, or is this kind of that? Yeah, I'm selling for a first and buying for a second, which means that he's just kind of stale on the market.
Oh, absolutely. I think you'd trade a contending first, and the big board is out. Big board 1.0 is out, and I've started to look at 2026 prospects a little bit here, but without question, I would trade a late contending first for Trey Benson.
So is that your way of saying that you're not too excited about this 2026 class?
There will be guys that we convince ourselves are very good. There are every year.
As we do. All right, let's talk about some
Pretty young.
receivers here.
Coming in, he's 23 years old, going like just turned 23 years old, so he's on the younger side. But yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about a name here that's not going to surprise anybody. But Puka Nacua right now, rest of season, I was done. I was moving him up a spot here and a spot there every single week. And I just said, what am I doing here? And I moved Puka up to the top of the list. I put him ahead of Jamar Chase, ahead of Justin Jefferson. I don't think, and like, even when I start looking at Christian McCaffrey and Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor, I don't know if there's a player I want in fantasy right now more than Puka Nacua. 35 targets for the first 3 weeks. Like, when you look at his scrimmage yards, the only players with more scrimmage yards than Puka Nacua right now are Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey. Like, this guy is just his usage as a rusher and a receiver, just the focal point of the offense. I don't know what else there really is to say other than, like, I don't know if there's a player that I want more than Puka right now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. And yeah, as you look at the landscape, it's tough to argue against that. I mean, it'd be nice if he caught receiving touchdowns. That would be a little cherry on top if that would happen. But
that's a testament to how good he is. He's currently the wide receiver 1 in fantasy scoring without a touchdown. And we're comparing him to guys like Rome Odunze, who have 4 touchdowns, and Puka Nacua is still outscoring those guys. I mean, like, the fear with Puka always is his play style. Like, I don't know how many times, like, it seems like every time we talk about Puka Nacua, we talk about the run through a defender's face mentality, and that ends up hurting him more than not. But it's also the reason that they give him the ball so frequently, because he does things with the ball in his hand that no other receiver can do. So, I was trying to trade for Puka this offseason, and I was greeted with a lot of he's not a movable asset conversations. But let's talk dynasty wise, like CeeDee Lamb or Puka Nacua. Who would you prefer, Jeff?
Right now, I'd take Puka over CeeDee Lamb.
What about Malik Neighbors or Puka Nacua?
Oh boy, probably Puka. That's close. That's a good conversation.
Justin Jefferson or Puka Nacua?
At some point, like, Justin Jefferson is like this like untouchable, like, dynasty wide receiver, and at some point, you got to recognize the situation of what's going on with the Vikings. I hate doing like that. That's my pushback about like having like rankings updated constantly in Dynasty, because like it's the type of thing of like
you have to play within these pockets.
Yeah, you have to do that, but also, like, in 3 weeks, do we say, well, that was silly to have Puka above Justin Jefferson? It's still Justin Jefferson. Like, that happens too much.
So would it be silly for me to ask you if you'd prefer Jamar Chase or Puka Nacua? Jamar Chase, mind you, like and I think it's a real conversation to have right now, because Jake Browning looked awful. And I know that Minnesota Vikings defense has given just about every quarterback they've faced so far this year fits. And you don't want to put too much credence into one really bad performance, but Jake Browning looked awful. That offensive line is so bad. Of course, it's Jamar Chase, and he's going to will his way just on his own gumption to 200 plus yards and a touchdown at least once this year. But with Puka Nacua, it's not like hoping it's going to happen every now and then. You know you're getting a surefire wide receiver one week in and week out. And, if you start looking way down the line, yeah, sure, maybe Jamar Chase is the better player. But, like, I think I'm at the point right now where, like, Puka Nacua is just my flat out wide receiver one in Dynasty.
Chase is still my wide receiver one. I don't know. I think you're selling a. I mean, you don't know that Chase is not going to do it the rest of this year. Is first off,
Right.
and the other part is, yeah, Joe Burrow's hurt, but like you said, we've seen Puka Nacua get hurt too. So it's not like he's impervious to being injured. So I just think Chase, especially long term when you're talking dynasty, I push back really hard on the dynasty mentality of play it like redraft, because I think that just creates unhealthy environments and it ruins the game of dynasty. So that's where I keep Jamar Chase wide receiver one.
Let's talk about another riser here, Jeff, Tory Horton. The utilization hasn't been great. He's getting on the field a little bit more on every given week, but I think because of that, there's still a buy window open here. And a lot of people are going to see 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks and say that buy window has slammed shut. But I think savvy managers are still going to say, well, he's still third on the team in routes run, and Jackson Smith-Jigba's there, and Cooper Kupp is there, and it's still a hurdle for him to clear. I don't think this is like a wait and see, like we're going to have to wait for Cooper Kupp to get injured or anything like that. Like, I think we're at the point now where Tory Horton has just proven to be a better receiver than Cooper Kupp. And whether it's this week or week 6 or week 8, at some point, I think we're just going to see Tory Horton just jump ahead of Cooper Kupp and be that secondary receiver on the Seahawks team. He's a player that I drafted in a ton of rookie leagues, so I'm not going out trying to make trades for him right now because I've got him on almost every single league. But also want to tell you and the listeners that, like, if Tory Horton's out there, I think that there's a lot of smoke here that shouldn't be ignored. Just a consistent drumbeat out of camp. The first hurdle to clear was MVS, and he did that his first week of practice. And now that we're in season, we're hoping that he can clear Cooper Kupp, but I think that's going to happen within the next few weeks here.
Yeah, I think my thought there is, like, does it matter? Because I think that when you look at it, we know the volume that's going to go Jackson Smith and Jigba's way. And the way that I think we have a pretty good idea of the way that this offense wants to function, with Jackson Smith and Jigba as the primary receiver on the run game and lean on the defense and really just brutalize people. And so my point on, does it matter, of like, Horton's already on the field, and he's probably, even if he surpasses Cooper Kupp, he's still probably more of a touchdown dependent play. So it's like you've already got the possibility of getting touchdowns. And I know week 2, Cooper Kupp had a heavier volume game. And, maybe week 3, it was the blowout that didn't lead to another receiver getting ultra involved. Or maybe it was like week 3 was like week 1. They did what they wanted to do.
And, that's kind of like when I look at this, we saw week 1, a really stout 49ers defense. Week 2, we saw the big blowout against the Steelers. Last week, we saw another big blowout. We haven't seen them in a position yet. Like, so much is made about
Steelers
the
game was
low
back and
pass
forth.
volume.
It was just the Caleb Johnson play, like, swung the game. That was a back and forth game, one possession game the entire game, until Caleb Johnson had that, gave them a touchdown to put them up by 2 touchdowns.
Good point. And that is the game where we saw Cooper Kupp also get 9
Yeah.
targets. So we saw, like, what could happen in a closer game. And I think that's what, like, so much has been made about the low pass volume here. And I just think we haven't really seen the Seahawks fully unleash yet. Sam Darnold has looked good.
Yes.
There was a lot of talk about him just turning into a pumpkin when he was out of the shadow of Kevin O'Connell, but now he's in Seattle, and it looks like everything that he learned last year in Minnesota, he's carrying over. He looks fantastic. So I'm not overly worried about this team, just kind of the wheels falling off of them. I think this team, if they get in a position where they say, hey, we're down and we need to throw, I think Sam Darnold is good enough that they can do that. And then we can see the volume raise a little bit. So a lot of the concerns that you're talking about with the low pass volume and how much it matters, even if he is the wide receiver 2 there, to me, that tells me that there's still a buy window here. And what do you think you can get Tory Horton for? Like a 3rd round pick? And, one of these buzzy injury away rookie running backs that might not amount to anything. Like, I'd gladly trade those guys away, or a 3rd round pick to get Tory Horton on my team right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you can trade a 3rd round pick for Tory Horton, you should definitely do that.
Dalton Kincaid is the last guy I want to talk about here, Jeff, and this is one that a very promising rookie season, followed by an injury-ridden year 2, and then preseason, just nonstop injuries. He had 2 knee injuries. He had an ankle injury. It just felt like he was always dealing with some sort of ailment. Had a touchdown in week 1, but didn't do a lot in week 2. But then week 3, we see him come out and not just have the touchdown, but like an emphatic touchdown, and he was a focal point of the offense, and he looked much more like the player he did his rookie season. So I think because that was a primetime game, a lot of people saw it. People put more weight into these primetime games, and that could make it tough to get Dalton Kincaid. But with how bad the tight end landscape is now, knowing that Dalton Kincaid is healthy, like that pushes him from way down in the rankings to pretty high up in the rankings, because outside of the top five guys, it's really just kind of a wasteland. And I almost wonder if Dalton Kincaid is now going to be back into that top three discussion. We got to remember, like a few years ago, it was Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, and Trey McBride were the big three. And then Dalton Kincaid was hurt last year. And now I think it's too early to start putting him back in that conversation, especially now that Brock Bowers and Tyler Warren and are there. But I don't think that Kincaid is far behind.
No, he's not. And this is an example of why I push back on the microwave culture in Dynasty, because it takes a minute for players to develop, or players are injured or things like that. And then they put it together, and all of a sudden you're right back to what you thought you had. And I bought some Dalton Kincaid this offseason, and I'm a happy Dalton Kincaid purchaser so far. And I think you're exactly right. When you see the other part of it too, when the Bills offense is operating at a level that they can just, like, we need to get Dalton Kincaid rolling. Let's just get Dalton Kincaid rolling. Whereas, like, you see, like, some worse offenses are like, we're just trying to do anything we can to move the ball. Whereas, like, some of these other teams of, like, the Ravens game, where it's like, this is going to be a Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman game. They've been bored the last couple. So we'll just, Zay Flowers, take a little bit of a break in this one. Like, I think, like,
Right.
when the highest end offenses have the ability to do that, they recognize what the defense is going to try to take away, and they just go to the other guy, but also get that other guy rolling, and it just makes them more diverse, more difficult to defend against. But yeah, and then the other end, it's like, well, we can only throw the ball to Nico Collins right now because nothing is working.
Right. So we talked about the good part of the show, the risers, the guys that are playing well right now that we're excited about. Now for the not so fun part of the show, the fallers, the guys who haven't looked good through these first 3 weeks. And I alluded to it at the top of the show, but Bo Nix is one of those guys. And I drafted him in one of the startups that we did, and I hated the pick. It was like the middle of round two. I needed a QB2, and I forced it. And I was looking at the board the other day, and there were so many running backs and wide receivers that I would have preferred, but I fell into that super flex trap of wanting to get my my QB2 early. And frankly, he just doesn't look good this year. That's like the really boiled down easy way to put it. But he's rushing more, and his efficiency is down. He's passing less, and his efficiency is down. He's not pushing the ball downfield. He's throwing more interceptions. I mean, we talked about it last year, or this offseason, I should say, that last year felt like it was built on an unstable foundation of efficiency, that he was just running red hot through the entire season. And now we're seeing that efficiency regression starting to hit, and Bo Nix has not been performing like the player he was drafted to be.
Well, our friend Matt Waldman, one of the things that he's instilled in me is, you look at a quarterback's career, and it's about the first 15 games or so, the defensive coverages tend to be very vanilla. Just, we're not entirely sure what we have with going against this guy right now. We'll kind of run some base. We'll just kind of see what's out there. And then those next 15 games, the defensive coordinators have had an offseason to reset. They've had circled X, Y, and Z. It's like a boxer of, like, you have a bad jab, so we know that now, and so we're going to take away your other punches, and you're going to try to beat us with that. And it happens. It's the CJ Stroud. It happened to CJ Stroud. It's CJ Stroud comes in year one as a rookie, and everything is humming, and Tank
He was
Dell
the
comes out of
overall
nowhere.
QB1 in Dynasty.
Yes.
Like there was a month period after that season that he was the QB1, ahead of Lamar Jackson, ahead of Jalen Hurts, ahead of Josh Allen.
Well, and that's where we learn what we have in quarterbacks, because I think Jordan Love is an instance of that, where Jordan Love, that first year out of Aaron Rodgers, it shocked everybody, and then it was tough after that. He kind of regressed a little bit, or a lot bit, and then he was able to fight through it, and we feel pretty good about where he has gotten back to. But Bo Nix is going through that. It's defenses know how to attack Bo Nix now, and Bo Nix is not. We opened the show talking about Caleb Williams. Bo Nix is not the level of natural gifted that Caleb Williams is. There's some levels of he's gonna have to figure some things out. And I told you week one, when everybody was spiraling about Caleb Williams, about the one throw that you were spiraling about, I said, watch
It
this
wasn't
Bo.
even an interception. It was just an errant throw.
I
Yeah.
said this Bo Nix throw that nobody is talking about is so much worse than that Caleb Williams throw. It was when he was rolling out against the Titans, going off and just out of balance YOLO ball over the middle of the field. There's so many layers of poor decision making involved in this, and just poor placement, everything involved in this. That throw to me was so much more a red flag than the throw that everybody declared Caleb Williams is never going to get it because DJ Moore decided to not run the full route.
And he had a lot of those throws last year that were just like dropped by defenders or just like in complete no man's land that would just hit the field. And yeah, like I said, like it feels like the writing was on the wall for this year two regression, and now it's rearing its ugly head. So hoping he can bounce back, but I think the production that we're seeing right now from Bo Nix, I don't really know what to do with him because I feel like selling now on a guy who is drafted in the top half of round one and is still, sure, older for a prospect, but still like young in the grand scheme of things and has some rushing upside. Like there are some desirable things here. So I don't want to say that like you just need to sell Bo Nix and get out from under him, but also like it wouldn't surprise me if midway next season they're looking at another option and Bo Nix isn't a part of the long-term plans here. And that's the big fear. So, if
I think we're
if
miles
it
away
just
from
keeps
that, to
spiraling
be
from here,
fair. I think we're miles from that, to be fair. But we're gonna find out
sure,
about next.
but it happens quick is what I'm saying. And like, that's like the longer you wait, the more value you're
Well,
losing out on. And if he does continue this slide, you're going to wish that you had sold now rather than just holding the bag next year.
the thing of it is, like, look at Daniel Jones right now. Look at Sam Darnold right now.
Yeah,
Look at Baker Mayfield,
sure,
where
sure. Yeah.
where they were rocket ships early in their careers, or they had so much hype around them, and then they got into a negative atmosphere, bad environment, and Baker Mayfield. There's been talk about his decision making when it comes to being an adult was really questionable at times at the end of his Cleveland tenure. After he started his very first game was the Bud Light game, and then like he had to beat the Steelers in the playoffs. Like everything was going great for him, and then he just kind of, I think, had to reacclimate himself and reset himself. Or Sam Darnold seeing ghost. Like Sam Darnold was, people were apoplectic that Sam Darnold was not the number one pick in his draft, and that was an insanely talented quarterback draft. Like that was the level that Sam Darnold was as a prospect. He had to get out of that environment, and he had to have some time to reset. Geno Smith is an example of he just needed some. Geno Smith was an amazing college prospect on a very, very fun West Virginia team. He just needed to get out of the environment, and it took him longer to reset. And so I think that that's where we see some of these when you talk about that window when the league adjusts. How do they deal with that negativity? How do they develop? And to Bo Nix's credit, he's already experienced a lot of that, because when he was at Auburn, he was a big time recruit. He was a legacy. His dad, Patrick Nix, was a very famous Auburn quarterback, and it got to be a very toxic environment, and he went to Oregon and reset. So I think that to his credit, Bo Nix already has the pieces in place that probably not a lot of quarterbacks would have in place to be able to pull out of potential tailspin here.
I think my major pushback there, and like, of course, we always want to see quarterbacks succeed. It's just better for the game of football. But when I hear Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold and
Yeah,
Geno Smith, and those
great
guys are all
prospects,
really
top 10
tough,
picks.
but also like really tough New York media. And you also Baker Mayfield, like Cleveland just has some juju around there that I'm not even going to try to get into. Like Denver was a good landing spot, and he's got a good head coach. And I don't think expectations were even that high. If anything, I'd say expectations were kind of low. Like he was kind of like the
Yeah.
punching bag of that quarterback class last year. So, I kind of get what you're saying, but I think that he's in a good situation right now, and struggling in a good situation to me is cause for concern.
Well, we'll see what he again. There's adjustment. I mean, CJ Stroud in a fishbowl. Like it's, I don't know. Like I just think it's a natural part of quarterback progression and quarterback learning is how do you react after the league knows how to attack you.
Let's talk about another faller here, Jeff. Chase Brown. Whew. Not feeling good about Chase Brown at the moment, and this is an obvious faller and another guy that, like, week one knocked him down a spot, week two knocked him down a spot, and this week I just said, what am I doing here? And I knocked him down 10 spots into like the low end RB2 consideration. And even then, when I shared the article, I have people saying you're probably too high on Chase Brown. And the opportunity share has been there, like leading the league in opportunity share through the first 2 weeks. We saw them just get absolutely ran out of town last week. And in that game, we saw Taj Brooks come in for some cleanup duty late. So I don't think that the box score really implies that Chase Brown is losing his role yet. But you look at it, like averaging like just over 2 yards per carry, not generating anything after contact, consistently getting hit in the backfield. And it's way too early to say, Chase Brown is going to be a huge bust this year, but we see this so often with these day three running backs. So like everything breaks right. They're in a good offensive environment. They get a lot of workload. They have this huge breakout season. And then year two, it just kind of falls apart. And I'm wondering if that's where we're at with Chase Brown already.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're a Taj Brooks guy, but so I don't mean to say this to offense, but if there was somebody with any level of juice behind him to like push him out of the position, like that would be one thing. Whereas like, I think that Chase Brown, I mean, I saw in one of my dynasty leagues, somebody had traded him for a first, just a naked first, before this week's game. And like that there was a lot of cover for Chase Brown the first 2 weeks. Between he was able to get a touchdown against Cleveland, but that was a concerning game. Then Joe Burrow's injury that was all you're allowed to talk about with the Bengals after week 2. Like you weren't allowed to talk about Chase Brown being bad. And then to get the week 3 egg that it's the type of thing of like, well, the cover got removed, and oh, by the way, this guy's been horrible for 3 weeks in a row and 10 carries for 3 yards. But you're exactly right. A day 3 running back, that's exactly the profile of guys that get replaced. And somebody might be hearing this and saying, well, they don't have anybody. I just said they don't have anybody else. The NFL has a way of finding somebody else for especially running backs, and famously in fantasy over and over again. That's
I
how
remember when Joe Mixon wasn't going to lose his job because they didn't have anybody else there. And you
Zamir
know who
White
that
didn't have
nobody else
anybody
was?
else. Zamir White had nobody else in the Raiders, and they're finding
Chase Brown
like
was the nobody else.
yes,
Chase Brown was the nobody else. He was the day 3 guy that wasn't going to take Joe Mixon's workload. And then they felt good enough to trade Joe Mixon away for pennies and give the workload to Chase Brown. I am going to rebut what you said about Taj Brooks, though. Juice, yeah, Taj Brooks is not a juice runner. He's not an explosive guy. He's not a breakaway run guy. But what he did so well at Texas Tech was run behind a really bad offensive line and take, I'm going to steal this right from Matt Waldman. And Matt Waldman and I, we've talked a lot about Taj Brooks. He had him as his RB3 in the class. I had him as my RB6, both big fans of him. And he nicknamed him Lemonade, because he said this offensive line was throwing lemons at him on every single play, and he was making lemonade out of it. He's getting hit in the backfield, he's getting tripped up, and he still generated yards after contact. He mitigated losses, and that's why he said he saw a lot of Frank Gore in his game, like somebody who did similar things. Like even if you get a hand on him in the backfield, he's still going to get back to the line of scrimmage. If you get him at the line of scrimmage, he's still going to get 2 yards. And I think that's something that Chase Brown doesn't have. Like Chase Brown, if you give him a big wide lane, he's going to run through it and he's going to take it to the house. Taj Brooks isn't going to do that, but I think that like this current iteration of the Bengals, what we're looking at, this terrible offensive line and no real threat of a pass game, I think Taj Brooks could actually excel in this environment. Maybe not excel, but do better than Chase Brown.
Well, and what do we see over and over again? We see the satellite back that has such great efficiency. The argument, just give him the ball 20 times. Look at what he's doing. I mean, Tony Pollard. Look at Tony Pollard. He had that great season with Ezekiel Elliott. Elliott leaves, and suddenly Tony Pollard is the feature back, and he's getting his butt kicked in between the tackles constantly. I mean, Bucky Irving is an example that we've seen so far this year, where he goes from being the change of pace guy that everything's spread out, let's get some yardage, oh my God, look at this efficiency, to like, we're just going to beat the heck out of him for 20 times per game. And that's where, yes, Taj Brooks doesn't have juice, but he does have that ability to be the between the tackle grinder. And so if the Bengals really are digging in on this thing, they should be saying, depending on where they feel with Taj Brooks, they should be saying, hey, maybe we need to get him going a little bit on early downs to kind of give Chase Brown an opportunity to reset here, but also to keep him fresher, so that when we do get into those favorable situations, we can roll Chase Brown out there and we become a better football team, because we have the ability to utilize both of these guys and to be able to roll in different directions.
Let's talk about two more fallers here, Jeff. And I'm going to go off schedule a little bit. We've been doing quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I'm going to save the wide receiver for last because I think that's the one that's going to get the most buzz. And let's just talk about Travis Kelce and just put it out there as a faller. No huge surprise here, but I think that the fall off has been drastic this year. And I think last year, the the age fall off was kind of not really recognized because they still forced him a lot of volume, but now that volume isn't being forced his way, and he just isn't looking good at all. I hate so much the if you take away this play type of analysis, but I went back and I watched, that touchdown he had in week one. And I think a lot of people got really excited. They saw Travis Kelce with a big touchdown in week one. I went back and watched that play. Really nice play design, which you got to give it to Andy Reid. He has these nice play designs from time to time, but they kind of put a receiver in motion to get the whole zone defense biting in that direction. Travis Kelce split two zone defenders, and then it was Tyquan Thornton running a deep post right across the safety's face in single high coverage. Travis Kelce literally caught the ball with nobody within 20 yards of him and walked into the end zone, like throttled down 50% as he crossed the plane in the end zone. If you take that one play away, and I know I hate to do this, if you take that play away, he's the tight end 30 on the year. I mean, it has just been absolutely abysmal. You got bailed out week one, but nothing else besides there. I'm at the point where I just say, like, we love a good sabotage drop, and I wonder if that's where Travis Kelce is now. Like, just drop him and force somebody else to take up the bench spot.
And then the Travis Kelce apologists out there will say, well, but if he just held on to that ball against the Eagles, he would have another touchdown and he would be scoring touchdowns every week. I think it's Travis Kelce in his prime does not get knocked off the way that he did in
Right.
Xavier Worthy. So like that, but this is what we see in players that
He also catches that ball at the goal line that you talk
right,
about that got just like pulled out of his hands.
right.
That's 5 years ago. Travis Kelce is making that catch 100 times out of 100 times and scoring the touchdown.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing about watching guys that have been elite age because it doesn't come back. Like it's the like once you the things that Travis Kelce has put on the field, it doesn't come back from that. It's not like I don't the first example that somebody can name in the comments of a player that looked like that bad at that point of their career that bounced back and put it back together again is the only example that exists out there. We see it with every single great player. Father Time is undefeated. That's what everybody always says. It's that again, it's the concerning things that you just don't the bobble, the Xavier Worthy play, those are the ones that stick in our mind because those are the most notable. But it's it's yelling at Andy Reid on the sideline, like that's kind of I think a lot of, and you see Noah Gray.
And I think even that we saw like a couple of years ago, Travis Kelce yelling at Andy Reid on the sideline, and there was no reaction. Did you notice this time Andy Reid kind of threw his chest up a little bit and kind of initiated contact, and you saw Travis Kelce like that? It was a very weird, 1 second in time stretched out through slow mo, analyzed by millions of people, but there was something there.
Noah Gray looked pretty good on Sunday night.
He did,
given opportunities. So, yeah, that's one that deep leagues. Noah Gray probably should be rostered in your deep leagues because you might see it's happening sooner rather than later for Travis Kelce. So,
last guy I want to talk about here, Jeff, and this is probably going to be the spiciest name on the show, a faller for me and a big faller in my rankings. I moved Lad McConkey from wide receiver 10 down to wide receiver 20, and I just look at it. Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen both have more targets than him. He's third on the team in receiving yards right now. He is a very good player, and maybe I'm galaxy braining this take, but I wrote about this in my article, and I also kind of built on it a little bit in a roundtable article that I'm doing with Matt Waldman right now. I almost wonder if his versatility is kind of what is impeding his fantasy production. And hear me out for a second. We know what Quentin Johnson does really well. Like he catches the ball near the line of scrimmage and makes plays after the catch. He gets behind defenses and he catches big balls. We know what Keenan Allen does well. He kind of works underneath. He's a very reliable target in the red zone. He can bully defenders in man coverage. Lad McConkey is that guy that you can move all over the formation. He can run every single route. He can run deep. He can run short, middle, outside, inside. There's nothing that he can't do. And it almost feels like his versatility is used as a function to kind of let these other guys do what they do best. Now, I'll say Ladd McConkey, a great football player, and he's going to have some boom games here and there, but I think this ball is going to be pretty evenly distributed in Los Angeles. We're going to see a lot of Keenan Allen, a lot of Quentin Johnson, and a lot of Ladd McConkey. And that doesn't mean McConkey's not a good football player, but it means that his projections and his expectations for the rest of this 2025 season, I'm looking at him as more of like a boomer bust wide receiver 2 than the high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 he was drafted to be.
Yeah, I mean, people had him up around wide receiver 10 and were taking him in the middle of the second round in some periods. So certainly the disappointment is palpable and it's understandable. I'll say covering the Chargers camp, it's not shocking, but like it would be the type of thing of there would be, and if you're like the Condre Lambert Smith, oh my God, he looks so good. Or like, hey, Trey Harris showed up. Like we got a good Trey Harris day. Or like Quentin Johnson keeps banging it at home like every day. And then there would be these occasional days where it was just like Ladd McConkey day, and Ladd McConkey would just embarrass everybody on the defense. And it was, I think some of it was battling. He's had some injuries in the preseason, and that was a little bit of a limiting factor. But I vividly remember Daniel Popper from The Athletic there was just one random day where it was like I think it was a Monday, like August 22nd or something like that, where he just said, by the way, Ladd McConkey reminded everybody like he's Ladd McConkey today. And it was just like the day, like they just went to Ladd McConkey over and over and over again. And you kind of, I feel like teams hear probably what is being said, or players hear what's being said. And I feel like we are due for a Ladd McConkey still the dude remembrance day here very, very soon.
I think we are as well. I'm not going to push back on that, but we're also seeing the 10.4 point performance and the 7.3 point performance and the 6.1 point performance. And to me, for very different reasons, but it kind of feels similar to AJ Brown, where we're just going to have these games where it's just like, you're just going to have to take it on the chin, and he's going to give you 4, 5, 6 points in your lineup, but he's good enough that he could have these massive blow up games and win your week. And there is value there. Like this is still a player you want in fantasy football. But typically when we see a guy finish as a top 10 wide receiver in his rookie season, we want him to grow off of that going into year 2. And we're not getting that with McConkey. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. And that's why he's a faller. It's not that he's droppable and you need to sell all of your McConkey shares, but there's expectations that when somebody is good as a rookie, they're going to be even better in year 2. And I think we need to look at McConkey coming up short of what he did last season.
How many points did Jamar Chase score this week? Or how many points did Zay Flowers score this week? I mean, even like, I think the elite receivers
like
you're going to have
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even the elite receiver, I mean, Malik Neighbors, what did Malik Neighbors do this week? I mean, I think you're going to have it on every single receiver. It just kind of, it's natural. I mean, every player, it's natural. And early in the season, it stands out a lot more. But I think that pretty certain that if you look at last year's scoring through week 5, Bijan Robinson was about running back 20. And Bijan Robinson did pretty good after that point. I think you're just betting on talent in strong situations. Like Justin Herbert is playing amazing football. Ladd McConkey, the talent is there. I think more often than not, early in the season, especially betting on the talent in good situations, you're going to I've just seen more often than not in this type of thing. We look back and we say, oh my God, did you remember when Ladd McConkey was wide receiver 38 through the first 3 weeks as he finishes like wide receiver 11? Like it's like that type of thing.
I hope you're right. Because I'd love to see it. Well, that'll do it for today. Risers and Fallers coming out of week 3, heading into week 4. After we record this show, Jeff and I kind of turn the page and start looking ahead at next week. And what we'll do Friday morning is sit down, go through every single matchup, talking about all the injuries, news, notes, everything you need to do in a matchup preview episode. Got some really good feedback on that one from last week. So we'll be doing that every Friday morning between now and the rest of the season. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you on Friday.